right, Sarah,
Hi,
we are
Nicole.
back with She Runs It. How you doing today?
I'm really good. You know why?
Why?
Because we're talking about our butts today,
I was just thinking about my butt and how great my butt is.
right?
Got this I don't know, it's kind of a convoluted relationship with my own butt. And I thought maybe because we're talking about butts, we should bring on a gluteus happiness expert.
Yes. I like how you switched that and did not say a butt expert, but a gluteus happiness expert. We have somebody special joining us today, Amy Connell.
Amy Connell.
Amy cannot stop laughing at the gluteus happiness expert.
And I love that you've become an expert on this topic. Amy, thank you so much for coming on the show. You have been a member of the skirt community for so long, and it's just been so fun to watch you spread love and joy out there in the world through your passions of fitness and nutrition and health. So I'm so glad you agreed to come on and talk specifically about all things gluteus today.
I'm so glad to be here, and I am just thrilled to be a part of this conversation and the extended skirt community. So thank you for having me on.
You guys, can we start by asking ourselves and everyone listening, if you're to ask yourself this question right now, what would the answer be? How do you feel about your butt?
Is that for me to answer?
Radio silence for all of us. Yeah. I mean, who wants to start? And if you're listening, you better be thinking about your answer. We're probably going to ask you to write this in a social media post.
Yeah, put in the comments. How do you feel about your butt? Do you like it?
Well, I'll jump in because I have no problem talking about my relationship with my body and the evolution that it's taken. But, honestly, I'm fine with it. I mean, apparently the ideal, and I want to be very clear that I'm using this in quotes, butt has shifted and changed over the year, but you know what? It does what I ask it to do. And it respects me and I respect it, which is, I think, one reason why we wanted to come on and talk about, kind of some taking care of it. But yeah, I'm like, whatever, it's fine. I've always been a little more sensitive about my abs and lack thereof than my butt.
I thought you were going to say ass, but that's okay.
I did
Abs
too.
works too.
Well, I think it's funny what you say, Amy, because it really has changed. So I have a broader behind, if you will, if you like some alliteration, a broader behind. And that so wasn't cool when I was growing up, but there's like a lot of power back there. And my daughter has the same one as I do. So it's really, because my mom didn't. My mom has like a much smaller one and all that. But so I have a lot of conversations with my daughter about how much power is in there. I played basketball, I played volleyball, all these things, like you really couldn't get past my butt. It was really large and it was sort of like a weapon. But there was no real role models for that, right? Growing up, it was meant to be that you would have a much smaller. Are you laughing? You're laughing about it being a weapon. I'll box you out in basketball and I can guarantee you I'll win. I'll get the rebound. You will not.
Oh my God. I love it.
But I love that this idea has changed, right? And it's clear. You see like the CrossFit generation and just as women, everyone's sort of owning both their thighs and their gluteus maximus because they're so powerful. They're such a powerful part of your body. So, which is part of the reason we wanted to talk about this today, especially as runners and in fitness, how important it is to have those strong muscles back there.
Yes.
Well, and I love this. And by the way, I think there's more than the gluteus maximus, but Amy's going to clue us in on that in a minute.
That's
I will also agree that growing up in the 70s and 80s and 90s, it was all about having a flat butt.
Yes.
Like how flat could your butt zip in? Could you make it look like your leg just extended all the way to your back? and like just the
For real.
flattest butt you could have. And I was a swimmer, and it wasn't I don't know if swimmers now have if the physique has changed, but it wasn't like necessarily a huge advantage to have like a super strong butt. But something, in society's like feminine ideal changed over the years, where then it became like you want to have a heart-shaped butt. Remember that like period of time? It was like the heart butt. And then they started putting pockets on jeans in like the perfect place to make your butt look like it had a little butt. And then it became, let's make that butt bigger than a little butt. So flat butt to little butt to like, let's really like give those cheeks some oomph, let's build those things up. And it was about, let's do all the exercises we can do to make these things as strong as we can. And I will tell you, I, for a while, got into this crazy class called Fitwall. Have you guys ever heard of Fitwall?
No.
I'll send you a video sometime, but it's like there's all these individual walls, and there's these handholds and bars, and you're literally like hanging on bars and jumping up and down on bars. And the guy who was our dictator in class, our our instructor, was just all about the gluteus. And he's like, you keep that muscle strong, you will be injury free, and your body will be healthier and stronger for life. And so I started learning about and absorbing the fact that the gluteus could be looked at as more than like this sort of sexual attribute on a woman's body, that this is actually like a really important muscle area,
like a powerful weapon
to include in our workouts. It's not just leg day and arm day, it's ass day, right?
Yes.
And with that, Amy, tell us
Tell us
about
all about the gluteus.
All the glutes.
happiness.
Well, I do want to also just kind of say it's a really good thing I can't sing, because I really wanted to bust into that, apple bottom jeans song.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
As you were talking, Nicole.
So
And I kept wanting to do Sir Mix-a-Lot. I like big butts. That's what I was just.
And
I
Baby
was
Got
like,
Back.
how do we? Yeah, Baby Got Back. How do we?
Oh yes,
Put all of
lots
this in
of
there, so.
lots of middle school, high school dances to those. Yeah, in my denim shirts.
Love it.
Yeah, Nicole, you're so right, and in your trainer there is right on. Our glutes are really, really important, and for so many reasons. I mean, as you know, because we have a running community here, it's important for running. It's important for injury prevention. And the other thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is having strong glutes. And I want to get into the particulars of those here in just a second. Will impact things well beyond your butt. It can really help your knees. It will help protect your knees from getting injured. And it's sometimes, and oftentimes actually, I will say, the area that we're working on will not only strengthen whatever that area is, but it will help your overall body work better, because it's just like the song that we sang when we were 4 years old, with the hip bones connected to the knee bone, and the knee bones or whatever that. I mean, it's called the kinetic chain. And so from the top to the bottom, and so strengthening those glutes are a really important foundation to the rest of our body. Now, one thing that I think a lot of people don't recognize is our glutes. And I mean, if you just take your hand, put it on the back, take it on your behind, there are about 7, it kind of depends on how you count them, but there are about 7 different muscles back there. So you have your gluteus maximus, which is that big, and that's the strongest muscle in your body. It's the biggest muscle in your body. But if you were to peel that away, there are about 5 different muscles that go laterally, that go from one side to another. And then there's a higher muscle called your gluteus minimus, which is kind of on that upper portion. And then there's your gluteus medius, which is on the outer side of your almost like your hips. I mean, what people I think would call their hips. And so all of those are important to strengthen equally. it's not just the gluteus maximus, but it's also important to strengthen all of those other ones, because when you don't, that's when you get muscle imbalances. And then that's when injury starts to come.
So number one, I totally felt my butt when we started talking about that. I was like, okay, oh, I feel those muscles. And then I just looked up a picture. I wish that we had, I know this is podcast related, but I don't think I ever realized that it was made up of so many different muscles. So this is fascinating. Very good information. So keep going on. But for anyone who's listening, I will say, if you Google gluteus, it will show you all the muscles that Amy's talking about. It's a nice visual to have.
Yes. I mean, and if you've ever been, I mean, look, a lot of us are runners, a lot of us are athletes in various forms, and probably there's a decent portion who have been injured. So if you've ever been in any kind of a physical therapist's office, or where they do myofascial release, and there's so many different avenues of helping injuries heal, but oftentimes they'll have those muscular charts. And my kids love to make fun of me because I have a muscular chart in the room that I work out in, as well as a skeletal system, because it's really helpful for me to go look at those and see how they all kind of see what's going on. Because sometimes I'll have a pain and I'm like, okay, is this it? And, and I'll just kind of work through it. But, and I will say too, the reason I have such a passion about this is because I've been injured so many times. So this is not like, oh, well, let me just push up my glasses and tell you all about the gluteus. This is like, I have been in the trenches, hurt so often, particularly in my early days of running, that I had to learn the hard way, and really figure out the best way for me to be able to do what I love to do without getting injured.
That's really actually super important, because I do think, our own personal experiences help us dig deeper into these muscle layers that we're about to get to. But starting on the surface, I do have a question. So a lot of women listening probably are like, well, I also have a lot of cellulite and lumps and bumps, and my butt doesn't look the way I want it to look. So by doing all these exercises, am I going to turn it into, a perfectly chiseled, piece of machinery?
Kardashian.
Yeah.
Apple bottom.
Yeah. So what's your answer there before we get started?
Well, I think it's important to remember a couple things. Number one, we were all born with different genetics, and some of us store our, I like to say adipose tissue, which is also known as fat, but some of us store our adipose in different areas, and that's going to be hard to change. Another thing is, you can strengthen the muscles all you want, but it may not stick with me here. It may not affect the cellulite that might be bothering you. That might also not be bothering you, but I don't want to make any assumptions. But the other thing, and I'm not an expert on this by any stretch of the imagination, but what I am learning is cellulite is actually more a function of your fascia, which is your connective tissue. And we have different types of fascia. The best way, Nicole, I know you don't eat meat. And Sarah, I'm not really sure about you, but like when you're dealing with like a chicken breast, and there's that real thin, fine, like thing that you can kind of peel off from a tender, that my understanding is that's fascia, or that's connective tissue on the chicken. Well, we have that too. And so we have fascia that holds our muscles together. So I like to say that's like the sack that holds the potatoes together. And then we also have connective tissue that goes, again, from the top of our head down to the bottom of our feet. When that connective tissue gets dry or overused in one area, like just kind of doing the same thing over and over, that's when it can kind of create those pockets, and then your adipose pokes out of it. So fascia is probably a great conversation to have with a true expert, because I'm not an expert. on the She Runs It podcast, but that's my understanding is it's actually more a function of your connective tissue. And if it's hydrated, and drinking plenty of water does not necessarily mean that you're keeping your fascia hydrated. You hydrate your connective tissue by moving it in lots of different directions, which I want to get to a little bit later for injury prevention, but also by foam rolling it. And I am on the learning process. I don't feel like I can speak as an expert to it, but doing some gentle foam rolling in particular ways, not necessarily like ironing back and forth, if that makes sense. That's
Yeah.
probably way more than you wanted to know, Nicole.
No, I think it's great. And I think it's also, the main point to the original question is like, it's not necessarily going to change some of the things that you might not appreciate about how your butt looks, but it's still going to make it stronger.
Right.
Well, and I
Yes.
think that's I mean, you brought up a good point, Amy, about kind of the kinetic chain, right? So if there's a break in the kinetic chain, now you have knee injuries, now you have leg injuries, now you can't run, now you can't bike, now you can't, do the things that you want to do. And when you're younger, when you're in your 20s, you can pretend that that's not happening, and usually, things don't break down quite as much, but get into your 30s, go through childbirth, or your body changes over time. And I think part of why we wanted to focus on this today was you know it's important for us to focus on strong glutes back there. And I guess my thought is, what are some of the ways that we can do that? So how can we, you talked about the different muscles which
Mhm.
make it up, but do we need to do different muscles to strengthen, or do exercises to strengthen each one of those, or do we need to um focus on it all at one time? What do you recommend?
Those are great questions. And I think that there are various ways of approaching that, as a personal trainer. So you guys have all done your own various forms of activity. I could probably say, well, I think glute bridges are a great place to start. And you may know that language and you may not, because your trainer may have said something different. So, but yes, there are absolutely, there are exercises to strengthen those. Back to the glute bridges, which is when you lay on the ground. I don't know if it's like lay or lie. I never get the grammar right on that. So if you know, correct me. But anyway, put your back.
I've always wondered too.
I don't know, but you put your back on the ground. We'll just call that.
I've never wondered. Now I'm gonna wonder. I'm gonna get it wrong. I'm like, oh, great.
Well, someone always used to correct me and say it's lie. But then everybody else I ever talked to said lay. So I don't know what to think. And who was that person?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's lay because I've always said lie. And then one of my clients said, well, it's ladies who lay. I don't know.
Oh,
Anyway.
that's weird. Okay.
Yes. But so get on your back. We'll just say that.
Right.
Get on your back on the ground, belly up, bend your knees. And then what you want to do is, and so you're going to bend your knees, your feet are on the ground, and you almost want to visualize, and you're going to hear this word visualize a lot today because it's so important, but making a tripod between your big toe, your little toe, and then your heel, and placing equal weight on that. So it's not all of your weight is on the heels, not all of your weight is on the toes. It's kind of equal. And then squeeze your glutes and lift your hips up to your kind of where it's going to be in line with your knees going down. So you don't want to arch your back too far. You just kind of want to have a nice straight line from your knees down to your shoulder blades, which are what are going to be on the ground. Nicole's demoing this as we're talking. I love it.
Well, I just did the first one, and I really actually the squeezing of the glutes is
Yes.
key, because a lot of people, when you do your bridges, will use their backs or their
Right.
hamstrings. So
Yes.
it's like you're literally doing like a squeeze up, right?
Right, right. So
Okay.
you are using those glutes to lift you up. Now, the secret sauce, no, I shouldn't say the secret sauce, but one of the secrets to really encouraging all of the muscles to work together is with many of your lower body strengthening movements, do it with a single leg. It's called unilateral. That's the official term. So if you can do those glute bridges with your left leg down and your right leg in the air and going down and up, and continue squeezing that left glute. If your left leg is on the ground, squeeze your left glute. And all of a sudden that challenge level is going to go through the roof. You can, and then obviously do it on the other side. If you are lunging, then do a single leg lunge. And another important part, and I'm going to segue here just a little bit, so bear with me, but an important part of any time you are doing something with a single leg is really focus on that knee of the stabilizing leg. So if you are standing with your left foot on the ground and you're taking your right foot back behind you into a lunge, which is basically just bending your left knee, keeping that knee back behind your toe, your right leg, depending on the trainer, your back leg is either going to be straight or bent. It doesn't really matter to me, but really focus on keeping that left kneecap as steady as possible. What happens is we get weak gluteus medius, which are those ones on the side of it's kind of like our hips. And the gluteus medius really holds your femur, which is your thigh bone, in place. And if it's weak, then your thigh bone will narrow in because it's not strong enough to be supported. And that's when you see your knee kind of veering in. So if you've ever had a race photo at our favorite Zuma races, for example, and you look at yourself and your knee is coming in, like when it's that, that super great position where we're just like landing on the ground and your knees leaning in a little bit, then that's an indicator that you have weak gluteus medius.
Interesting. I will say, just from demonstrating while you were talking, although no one could see it, except those of our listeners watching on YouTube, because we do put these on YouTube.
Oh, good. Okay.
But is that one thing I learned a long time ago? One of my coaches or trainers said, put your hand on the muscle you're supposed to be working and feel it working. And so while I was just doing that lunge, I was like, wait, which glute is supposed to be working if my left foot's forward and my right foot's back? And then I put my hand on my glutes and I was like, I got it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And that goes along with the visualization. I think that is a really underused element of executing a movement in its proper form. So that way you don't hurt yourself. And I just do want to take a step back and tell you the reason I know this is because in one of my many times I was injured, I went in and it was at a place called Rosti, which they do like myofascial release. And she said, well, let me kind of see how your glutes are working. And she said, do some squats. And I'm like, oh, I don't think I was a personal trainer at this point, but I've been teaching group fitness for years and years. I'm like, I do squats and lunges. I got this. I'm strong, go on in. Like, I got this. And she was like, oh yeah, your glutes are really weak. And I'm like, no, they're not. She said, and so she went through and explained it to me. So you can absolutely be doing a lot of squats and lunges, but if your form isn't great, or if you're not strengthening all of the different muscles, then some muscles can get weaker and weaker as the other ones are getting stronger and stronger and overcompensating. And then that's what leads to injury.
What a cool example. I mean, through failure, I guess you figured out, but I love it. And you're right. The visualization is super important. Having someone point it out to you and then being able to actually feel that muscle in motion, that helps a ton, because then you can trigger it on your own.
Yes.
Feeling your butt in public in gyms and stuff is really cool. So you're doing it a lot.
Well, it's interesting. I'm training someone over Zoom right now. And as I go through and we're going through a muscle, and she said, well, where am I supposed to be feeling this? And I'll explain it to her. And she's like, okay, now I do. And so a lot of it is just paying attention to what needs to be working. And, there's a mind body connection. And once your brain is like, okay, now it's the gluteus maximus, or maybe it's the gluteus medius. And, kind of turning that on and activating it just through our brain, even though it sounds a little woo-woo, that really does make a huge difference.
Well, I will say one more thing, which is just sort of like self advocacy, which is when you're in a fitness class or you're doing a workout that somebody's supervising and you feel awkward, like you're not doing it quite right, ask them where you should be feeling it. Even if it's a group class with like 20 people, be like, where should I be feeling this? Because I'm feeling it in weird places. And I think that can help a ton too.
I think that's a great point. And I think any trainer or fitness instructor worth their weight of their gym shoes should be more than happy to answer that question. And if they're not, then that's another conversation. But
Totally.
Go to a different class, right?
Oh my God. All right. So we've got bridges, we've got one-legged bridges, we've got lunges with your knee tracking in the proper position, which is forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What
are you wanting more? Because I've got more.
Bring us more.
Yeah.
Bring us more, and tell us which muscle these different exercises is aiming at.
Great. Well, so one of the things that I wanted to think about in terms of this community is, this is a group of runners. And so oftentimes, I mean, I know when I go out and I'm meeting a friend, we're meeting at underneath a street light at 6 o'clock in the morning, or we'll meet at a parking lot. And so I wanted to be able to give you exercises that you could do standing up, not in a gym, but just that where you're kind of waking everything up before you go run. Because again, just like what we were talking about with the mind body, if you will activate those muscles, then they are more likely to be engaged as you're using them. So one of the other ones that I love doing as a warm up is what I call a figure 4 single leg squat, which sounds more complicated than it is. But if you just you need to have a little bit of flexibility with this. But if you stand up and you're standing on your right leg. So Nicole, since you're doing this with me, I'm just going to verbally guide you through this. Stand on your right leg and cross your left leg over where it's right above your knee. You don't want it on the knee, but above the knee. Now squeeze your right glute. There we go. Awesome. Squeeze your right glute and push your glute back like you're going into a squat. Make sure that you're keeping that knee.
Ow.
Keep your knee. What's saying ow? I don't like to hear ow. Tell me
it's
what's
not an ow. It's more of like, more
you're tight. Okay. Okay. So this is why I love this one. It is strengthening all of those mini muscles in your right glute, because your right leg is what's on the ground, and it's getting your piriformis, which is one of those smaller muscles back there, your gluteus minimus, which is kind of that upper muscle. I'm sorry, I can't remember all of the other ones. There's so many of them back there, but it's getting that. And at the same time, it's stretching your left glute as you go down. Nicole, are you feeling that as you go down?
Oh yeah, I love it. Actually, I've done this move in yoga, but not as a squat, where you can actually do some reps, which is cool. Now I have to do the other side though.
Yeah, you got to do the other side.
Even
Now, and if you're not used to doing that, what I recommend is that you are near somewhere where you can kind of grab on. So maybe you're grabbing onto that car, or you're grabbing onto a light pole or something like that. Because if you're not used to doing balance, then, I don't want you falling, especially when your leg is, crossed over your knee. But which, by the way, over 40, really important to be focusing on that balance as well. But that's another one that you can do. Maybe start with 5 reps on each side, see how that feels, and work up a little bit more.
Nicole,
I think the key, really quick. The key on that one was the sticking out of the butt.
Yes.
Because in yoga, I'm like, I guess I'm doing it wrong, but I'm like kind of trying to go straight down. But when you actually stick out your butt in more of a squat position, I think that one's really effective. I love it. I'm going to add it to my repertoire.
There you go. Yeah. And keep that knee behind your toe.
And I was going to say, Nicole, we should snap some links to kind of how to do this. Because anyone listening, that may be difficult to process. I was watching it happen, and it was still difficult to process. So we can add those links in the comments.
Magical.
And then
it was magical, Amy, Sarah. It was.
Amy,
you probably have videos. Do you have some videos we can link to?
I do. I will see. And the other thing is, I assume that you have a Facebook group or community.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be happy to work with you offline and just come on and do a Facebook Live going over all of these that we talk about.
Awesome.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well, and Amy, I have a specific question. So I have a lot of knee issues, right? So lunges are typically out for me, the figure four that I just saw. Now glute bridges, I think would be fine with knee issues. Are there any other, do you have maybe one more glute exercise that would be safe for creaky
Yes.
knees?
Yes. And this one, it's funny you asked that, Sarah. This is a comment I get from my community a lot because I mean, I'm 46 years old. Most of my community is 40 and up, and our knees just aren't quite where they used to be. So I actually just created a free program called Squat Free Strong Legs. And all you need, oh, I happen to have one right here. All you need is I call these loops. These are resistance loops. So they're about 12 inches. It's a circuit. It's like a really big, huge rubber band. If you're on YouTube, you can see it. And everything I do in there is really just with these. And these are like, I can give you links, but they're like $7 or $8
We
for a
actually are
package of 5.
our Fitter, Stronger, Faster challenge we're giving if you register early.
There you go.
I just want to point out the fact that your class, Amy, and what I was just saying about Fitter, Stronger, Faster, those were not planned. Those are not planned promotions.
They were not planned promotions. They were not. But
No.
this is such a need for people because we are getting older and we want to keep moving. We want to keep strengthening our muscles, but we have to work around it a little bit, which is fine. I mean, this is, if that's you, that's fine. One of the things that I haven't given you any exercises for is strengthening that gluteus medius, which is the muscles on the outside. And that's one of the ones that I feel like is so important to focus on because again, that's what keeps your femur in line and that's what keeps your knee from getting injured in the future. So, one of the things you can do, well, if you're getting ready to go for a run, just stand up, pull your shoulders back, pull your core in. And I like to say, if you're not familiar with what engage your core means, the visual I like to do is say, okay, lace your rib cage together and pull your belly button back and pretend like someone was going to come punch you in the gut. And then that's what will, that's pulling your core. But then shift your weight over, keep your shoulders steady, and then take your left foot out. And what you want to do is internally rotate your knee. So you want to take your knee down to the ground as much as you can, your heels off the ground, your toes on the ground, and then you're just going to lift your leg up and down, and you will feel that gluteus medius, that side muscle, really, you should feel some heat on it pretty quickly. So one of the things that you really want to make sure that you're doing is keeping those shoulders steady. So it's more of a leaning over more of a shifting over rather than a leaning over.
So walk me through that again. You stand up, you engage your core.
Right. And then you're going to shift your body over to the right side. So on this video, you can see that my shoulders are still parallel, right? And then take your left foot out and then pull your left heel up and your toe is down on the ground still.
Okay.
And your knee is facing down to the ground as much as possible.
Okay.
Then with a straight leg and keeping your shoulders steady, you're going to lift that leg up and down.
The left leg, right?
The left leg. Yes.
The leg you put out with your toe down.
Okay. Right. Now, when you do that, that's called an internal rotation. When you do that internal rotation, what it does is it focuses all of the effort to your gluteus medius. That I also call it the gush, which is not a technical term, but people are like, "Oh, okay, I know what you mean by now." Because if you do it with your knee up, like a ballerina or like a dancer, that's focusing on your quad a little bit more. Then your quad is lifting it rather than your gluteus medius. There's nothing wrong with doing it with your knee up unless you're trying to strengthen those glutes. So again, it's all in the head and where your focus is.
So it sounds like, again, you need to reach back and put your hand on your gluteus. and ensure that it's engaging. Because I know one thing I've come to understand is how much we can do things with the incorrect form. And we think we're doing the right exercises, or you're really strengthening this, but you're kind of breaking things down because you're not doing it right and you're not strengthening all the right muscles. So I think it's key to do to kind of get that form right, make sure that you're engaging the correct muscle, and getting in a few of those at a time versus, a bunch of reps of things that are incorrectly done. It's
Yes.
better to focus on that form and really build the strength in the muscle.
I completely agree. And I think too, I mean, it's worth the time to either do some research on, Google or wherever. I do one of the things I do on my Instagram feed and Facebook actually is I take one movement and I break it down and I go through step by step by step by step, because I know that there's a lot of people out there who are looking for workouts and exercise, and especially since we've been at home, and making sure that we're doing that. Because I have what's called upper cross syndrome, which is my shoulders rotate in, because I did push-ups with rounded shoulders for probably 35 years, whereas I really should have been doing them with my shoulders back and down, which I know that this is not an upper body focus, but to your point, Sarah, yeah, I mean, it can cause issues.
Right. Yeah. And it's key to not just, punch out a bunch of reps thinking, because you're like, oh yeah, I nailed it. But it's like, no, actually, you can cause your body more harm if you're not doing it right. So I love the idea of, really I love that you have the photo of the skeletal system in your workout room, because it's so key. I'm looking at these photos while we're talking about it, and I'm like, oh wow, I never had any idea what these different ones are and how important it is to keep all of those muscles engaged.
Yeah. Well, and if I can add one more in for the gluteus medius, I was talking about these loops that you guys are using in your challenge as well. If you will just take those and put them right above your kneecap, you don't want to go on the knee, but just put it an inch or so above the knee. And again, engage your core, take your shoulders back and down, and just take a few steps to the right, and then take a few steps to the left. That's a really great way of strengthening those gluteus medius muscles as well. And there's a lot of different variations that you can do. And maybe you start with 3 or 4 steps both ways, and then you can work up to that. But that's a really great way of strengthening that hip musculature, your glutes, and without a whole lot of investment.
I love it. I mean, I think there's mirrors in gyms for a reason. You're supposed to be looking at yourself doing these exercises to make sure that you're doing them right. And it doesn't hurt if there's other attractive people in there that you're looking at. Yeah. What was that?
I said, you mean those mirrors aren't just there for self-torture?
I thought they were there to check out the other hot people in the gym who were checking you out at the same time. I think at the end of the day, every muscle group is important, but I think it is really extra important to have a special episode on the gluteus. And hopefully everybody after listening to this will find some more gluteus happiness. I know I certainly have. I think it's time for our takeaways. Do we have some today, Sarah?
We do. Well, my first, maybe it's not a takeaway, but maybe my wish is that when Tim edits this episode, that maybe we switch out the music. Maybe we can lead in with the Sir Mix-a-Lot and lead out with the Flo Rida apple bottom jeans. I'm just saying it would really help with the theming.
We're doing it. We'll get on that editor and we'll get him to pick some good booty songs.
Love it.
Awesome. Love it.
Okay, my first takeaway is that it's that the gluteus max. How do I reference it? Is it just the gluteus? Does the gluteus reference?
I think you can just say the glutes, because that encompasses all of the muscles in that area.
Okay, so the glutes, also known as your butt, are very important overall to keeping being able to continue running, working out, keeping strong. They're a very important group that we really need to focus on. And there's actually, you said 7, right? 7 muscles. I was listening.
Yeah.
There are 7 muscles within the glutes, and it's important that they're all kept strong. And then a few of the different exercises that you shared with us, just to summarize and take as our takeaways, are your glute bridges, lunges. It was the figure 4. Is that right?
Yes. The
And
figure 4
then
squat.
we didn't name the one that you mentioned about with the knee out. What was the one
Yes.
standing?
Yes. So that's what I call a standing leg abduction, abduction, because you're taking your leg away from your body.
Standing leg abduction.
Yes.
And then also as simple as taking resistance bands, putting them right above your kneecaps, right above there. And then engaging your core and stepping left, stepping right. That is a great way to start strengthening some of those outer glute muscles. So
Yes.
that, I think, is my summary of all that we talked today. Nicole, did I miss anything?
No, I just think that Amy Connell is an awesome genius. And I'm
Yes.
very happy that you agreed to come on the show and talk all things glutes, because it is not a topic that a lot of people want to spend time on. You know, we needed to have a little booty love tonight. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do it. And I think it's something too that people just start doing the same thing over and over and over. And then maybe you don't realize that in order to have a well-rounded booty, they need to do a few more exercises.
Yes. Well, Amy, is there a place that our listeners can find you?
Yes. Well, if they're interested in the Squat Free Strong Legs program, again, it's a free download. They can go to gracedhealth.com/strong legs, all one word. And then I'm basically Graced Health everywhere. It's GRACED Health. I have a podcast, and I say it's for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves. And the most important part is also enjoy a little chocolate in the process. And that's where Nicole joined me. And then I'm on Instagram at Graced Health, Facebook Graced Health. I have a Graced Health community where we dig in a little bit deeper and have challenges and all kinds of fun stuff. So yeah, I would love to connect.
That is fantastic. Well, good, because you have a lot of really great information to help keep our listeners running, walking, biking, swimming, all the good things that they want to do for many, many years to come. So, Amy, thank you so much for your time and all of your great information.
Awesome.
And,
I think it's time for us to finally take our hands off of our butts. Do you still have yours on? All right. This is it. Take it off or leave it on.
Or leave it on.
Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. This was fun.